The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our last webinar of 2016. And we have a fitting topic as we come to the end of another year. Representatives from Babcox Media are presenting 2016, a year in review. Our presenters today are Amy Antonora, Mark Phillips, and Jim Merle. We had a last-minute presenter change. Scott Schreiber was unable to join us today, and so sitting in for him is Mark Phillips. I want to share brief bios on each of our presenters before we get started. AMN editor Amy Antonora has been reporting daily on the business of the automotive aftermarket for 14 years. She also is editor of AMN Global, which launched in 2015 and serves as managing editor of Counterman magazine, AMN's sister publication for the parts distribution segment. Amy began her career as a newspaper reporter and went on to work in public relations for 2 state universities before joining Babcox Media in 2002. She is a graduate of Kent State University and in 2009 earned the Automotive Aftermarket Professionals designation from Northwood University's University of the Aftermarket. Mark Phillips joined Babcox Media in 2008 and is currently the editor of Counterman. He frequently attends auto shows in Germany, Italy, and Taiwan. Prior to joining Babcox Media, Mark worked for more than 13 years in the newspaper industry and edited several newspapers in Ohio and Boston. He is a graduate of Ohio Wesleyan University. And finally, Jim Merle has been with Babcox Media since 1993 and currently serves as group publisher of Brake and Front End, Import Car, Underhood Service, Shop Owner, and Servicio Automotriz. Jim currently serves as the Auto Care Association's Marketing Committee and the Strategy Track Committee for the Automotive Communications Council. Jim has a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration with a major in Marketing and Advertising from the University of Akron. So with that, I will hand it over to Amy Antonora, and as usual, we will take questions. You can type them into the questions box on the right side of your screen. So Amy, you can take it from here.
Thank you so much, Katie. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're really excited to be here and appreciate you taking the time out of your day to chat with us for a few. Hopefully you have a good cup of coffee and you're ready to settle in. It should be a fun conversation. I'm here to speak with you today about the general overview for the 2016 year in review for the auto care industry. As Katie noted in her very gracious introduction, I've been covering the business of the aftermarket for 14 years now. And one of my favorite parts of my job is exactly what we're doing today, which is taking a moment at the end of the year to take a step back and just assess how far we've come and all that has taken place. It's a pretty fascinating process to review and recap not only what I see from my editorial perspective as some of the biggest changes and biggest news stories in the industry in the past 12 months, but also from a readership perspective, and that would be your perspective in terms of what has impacted your business and what really caught your attention this year. So let's get started and we'll take a look. So being a writer and an editor and a bit of a word nerd, I'm always a fan of those dictionary publishers that release their quote-unquote word of the year. You may have seen them, I don't know. I decided to choose my own word of the year for the aftermarket, and that word is convergence. I'm going to use 2 definitions to illustrate why I feel the word convergence best sums up the aftermarket industry in 2016. So the first definition of convergence is the act or instance of converging, which is to meet or gather. And we in the aftermarket converge upon AAPEX every year, as we just did last month, and it's the largest, most important gathering of aftermarket products, people, and ideas in North America. So just how big? Let's break down the numbers. AAPEX is the 31st largest trade show for any industry in the U.S., according to the Trade Show News Network. SEMA is actually number 5 on that list. This year, AAPEX had 2,300 exhibitors, 160,000 attendees registered for both AAPEX and SEMA combined, and we had an impressive 22,000 service professionals registered as well. 68,000 buyers, and 13,000 of those were international buyers. So you, as attendees of AAPEX and members of this industry, are part of a silent giant, a silent giant that is now learning to sing. So what exactly do I mean by this? In the past, the automotive aftermarket has been referred to as a silent giant, and it is giant. It's estimated that the industry today is worth some $257 billion and accounts for more than 700,000 direct jobs in the United States alone. As a quick aside, it's my belief that there's essentially two types of people that work in the aftermarket today. Car guys and girls, people that either entered the industry through a family business or love to tinker on cars, or people like me who didn't even know what the word aftermarket meant when I first entered the industry. I remember distinctly my first year covering the industry, how Napa stores and Dana trucks and O'Reilly stores would just pop up everywhere, literally everywhere before my eyes. They were always there, mind you, all along, but now I knew their significance. And my point in telling you that is to get back to the reference of the silent giant. This giant is silent no more, my friends. The aftermarket is truly coming into its own, and as you can attest, the aftermarket is doing a great job today of learning to connect the dots for consumers and motorists, which leads me to the word convergence again. Definition number 2. The merging of distinct technologies, industries, or devices into a unified whole. So in my mind, this year was truly the year of convergence in the automotive aftermarket. A few of the examples we're going to talk about today, I'm referring to them as the old guard meets the young startup, centuries-old companies on the cutting edge of new technology and innovation, and the Detroit Three and Silicon Valley now playing in the same sandbox. Years ago, the words computers and cars were not likely to appear in the same sentence very often. Fast forward to 2016, and vehicles today contain more computers than an early NASA space shuttle. Just this week, in fact, while proofreading a column by our beloved columnist, Mandy Aguilar, I learned that most cars today carry sensors and controllers that require more than 100 million lines of code. So to put that in perspective, Mandy, in his latest column for Counterman, shared that a car's software with more than 100 million lines of code rivals that of a Boeing 787 with 14 million lines of code. Or get this, Facebook, which just has 60 million lines of code. So that's a pretty impressive number if you think that the computer code in a car trumps that of Facebook and a jet that flies, you know, coast to coast a million times a day. So that's pretty cool, right? Cars and computers, convergence. These magnificent computers on wheels that we ride around in today are made up of parts from some of the most venerable names in the business. Just think of all the brands that your companies offer. Some of these companies today create cutting-edge products that make cars safer, lighter, more efficient, and these are the same companies that were once supplying Henry Ford. Just this year, Tenneco's Monroe brand and AC Delco marked their centennial, and Sherwin Williams, the paint company that now provides low VOC waterborne paints that help protect the environment, has marked 150 years in business. These companies aren't stodgy old businesses. These are agile, creative brands on the leading edge of innovation today. Once again, we see convergence. Venerable, historic automotive aftermarket companies that stood the test of time to become modern technological powerhouses. But let's just drill down a little further. Detroit by way of Silicon Valley. If I was asked to pick one topic that I think was the most significant news topic in the industry this year, it would without a doubt be that of autonomous vehicles. Whether we are talking about Tesla's infamous autopilot feature to the real-world testing of the Google car, or Denso's work in Asia on vehicle-to-vehicle infrastructure to automated emergency braking. Automated vehicles of some variation are not just coming, they are here. And going back to my earlier point about convergence of computers and cars, these two industries have converged as well. Today we see former Google execs now working at Ford. We see Denso, Littelfuse, and even Capstone Financial setting up shop in Silicon Valley. The tech industry and the automotive industry are no longer just neighbors, they are roommates today. Yes, this is an incredibly exciting time to be part of this industry, but it will not be entirely rosy, to be sure. Consider Tesla and Google to be the canaries in the coal mine here, as we need to be mindful of the cybersecurity, safety, and legislative benefits and complications this technology will bring. So in my mind, that is really the standout theme for this year, convergence. and autonomous vehicles are probably the #1 topic we've been talking about in this industry and in the news. But what's ahead for 2017? Now that we know where you're coming from, what lies ahead? Regardless of your personal political affiliation, we would be remiss not to pose a few questions about the incoming administration. President-elect Donald Trump has been vocal about several areas of legislation and policy which could have direct impact on the automotive aftermarket. You as members of the Auto Care Association are very fortunate to have an outstanding staff in DC who is always 10 steps ahead when it comes to the issues you need to be aware of and preparing for these issues that impact your business and the industry as a whole. I encourage you, if you don't already, to make sure you are reading the association's Capitol Report e-newsletter and getting to know the lobbyists who work every day on your behalf in Capitol Hill. Some of the questions that are looming for the auto care industry as the new administration steps in will be centered around NAFTA and the Trans-Pacific Partnership and international trade in general, as Donald Trump has been a vocal opponent of NAFTA. We also need to keep in mind where we stand with U.S. manufacturing jobs, and particularly environmental issues. Just today, Donald Trump announced that he will likely elect Scott Pruitt, the Attorney General of the oil and gas-intensive state of Oklahoma, to head up the EPA. This could have significant impacts on everything from copper, CAFE, fuel economy standards, and more. So these are just a few of the things that we've been talking about here in the office, and I'm sure you are on your mind as well. Next, I'm going to hand it off to my esteemed colleague, Mark Phillips, editor of Counterman Magazine, and he's going to talk a little bit about M&A. Thanks again for listening and for your readership. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, feel free to email me at any time. My email address is on the screen. Thanks again.
Thanks, Amy. Again, this is Mark Phillips. I'm the editor of Counterman, and we're going to be speaking about mergers and acquisitions, which are also a very exciting thing. On behalf of AMN and Counterman, we appreciate your support and your continued readership. Today, we're going to take a look at mergers and acquisitions. By their very nature, they're usually tedious to understand and internally difficult to execute, because anytime you integrate two or more corporate identities with all of their own unique and distinct personas, you're in for a challenge. Now, please keep in mind that during this presentation that the activities discussed here are for informational purposes only, and they're not intended to be speculation, prediction, or advice on these activities. Questions raised are for thought provocation only. For today's webinar, we're going to focus on the year 2016. It is, however, impossible to keep our discussions entirely to that specific year, since these M&A activities can take many months to complete from announcement to close. Many activities started in 2015 and didn't close until 2016, and consequently, many of the actions announced in 2016 will not close well into 2017. This is due to the fact that many of these activities include publicly traded companies and require different agency approvals. 2016 has been a very busy year for M&A. This is typical during a period of strong business performance, companies in strong cash positions, and when cost of capital is relatively low. This year we saw activity in distribution, manufacturing, and the newer segment of telematics. It's probably worthy to note that for the next several years, there will be a slot of activity in this new and quickly growing segment of the aftermarket. This year showed movement across all kinds of different product lines. We saw changes in filtration, electronics, glass, coatings, seating, exhaust systems, braking, and tires. Here's our first example of why we need to look back and forward just beyond 2016. In 2015, Icahn Enterprises completed its acquisition of substantially all of the assets of Uniselect USA's Incorporated and Beck Arnley and World Parts. I'll get that right. This transaction included 38 distribution centers and satellite locations, 240 corporately owned jobber stores, and more than 3,500 employees in the United States. Icahn Enterprises retained the AutoPlus brand name, and Brent Wyndham was named President and CEO of AutoPlus. So while all of this activity started in 2015, it completed and remained in the news well into the mid-2016. There were more Icahn Industries announcements as well. Icahn Enterprises announced during 2016 that it had closed its acquisition of Pep Boys in an all-cash transaction for $18.50 per share, or approximately $1.03 billion in aggregate equity value. Icahn also outbid Bridgestone for the business in a bidding war that wrapped up in January. Bridgestone initially announced the merger agreement in October to buy Pep Boys for $15 per share. And then there was more Federal Mogul and Icahn news. Federal Mogul announced that the company had entered into an agreement and plan of merger with a subsidiary of Icahn Enterprises, Federal Mogul's majority shareholder, in an all-cash transaction for $9.25 per share. The merger agreement has been unanimously approved by the board of directors of both companies, the audit committee of Icahn Enterprises, and the special committee of independent directors previously established by Federal Mogul's board of directors to review and evaluate Icahn Enterprises' proposal. This transaction is structured as a tender offer followed by a merger. Then just this week, Federal Mogul Motor Parts, a division of Federal Mogul Holdings Corporation, announced the acquisition of the Beck-Arnley brand and certain associated assets. Beck-Arnley is a leading provider of premium OE quality parts and fluids for foreign nameplate vehicles in North America. This action is the finalization of an earlier action that continues the Federal Mogul Motor Parts strategy to continue to deliver the broadest range of high-quality products to the automotive aftermarket. Torque Capital. The company recently announced that it has completed the purchase of the North American and European light vehicle automotive aftermarket business of Remy from Warner. This business includes the North American light vehicle rotating electrical remanufacturing business, the North American power steering business, and the European light and medium rotating electric remanufacturing business. It's interesting to note this is the same firm that purchased BP Inc. in 2013. Another late 2015 acquisition was AAPEX acquiring Eastern Catalytic. This is a strategic acquisition that will combine AP's full-line exhaust offering with Eastern's first-to-market catalytic converter emissions capabilities, thus positioning the combined entity as a total exhaust supplier. And then we have Affinia. Affinia was acquired by Mann Hummel, and it created one of the largest filter companies. The transaction, which was announced in August 2015, has resulted in a company with more than 20,000 employees and a combined 150 years of leadership in filtration. Innova. Innova Electronics acquired aftermarket telematics technologies. The CEO of Innova Electronics said, quote, "By completing this strategic acquisition, we're able to offer a full suite of telematics solutions for automotive aftermarket parts and service providers so they can build stronger customer relationships through connected car technologies." Following the acquisition, Innova formed a new division, Innova Telematics Solutions. How about Snap-on? Snap-on has acquired Sturdivant Richemont for approximately $13 million in cash. Sturdivant, with annual sales of approximately $10 million, designs, manufactures, and distributes mechanical and electronic torque wrenches. The acquisition will expand Snap-on's capabilities in providing solutions that address today's critical torque requirements. Snap-on also announced that it has entered into an agreement to acquire Caroliner Holding AB for approximately $155 million in cash. Next we have Johnson Controls. It announced that its automotive seating business is now Adient, an independent publicly traded company with 75,000 global employees focused on strengthening its market-leading position. Then JCI and Tyco International announced plans and leadership for the new combined entity. This will be one of, if not the largest seating companies in the automotive space. How about for tech? We have Autologue Computer Systems acquiring 3 inventory management systems from eBay. Jim Franco, who's the CEO and president of Autologue, announced that the 3 systems have been added to Autologue's product offerings. There are now 8 different systems to offer any size customer. Sherwin Williams. The company acquired Valspar. This is another activity that started in 2015 with the Valspar acquisition of the Quest Holdings. These included Matrix Paint, Pro Spray Products, and U.S. Chemical. These companies were part of a previous set of acquisitions several years ago. Now, Cleveland-based Sherwin Williams has acquired all of these brands by purchasing Valspar. Now, while the automotive coatings portion of the business is probably not the driver of the acquisition, both companies are giants in the home decor segment. It will provide interesting positioning of the brands in the automotive sector. And there were others as well. Continental and Hoosier Tire, MPA with their turbochargers, WAI with DuBois Marketing, and PPG for their glass division. I'm sure we've missed a few, but these and many others can be researched at aftermarketnews.com. Again, I'm Mark Phillips, editor of Counterman. I can be reached at mphillips@babcox.com. Thanks for your attention, and now I would like to turn this over to Jim Merle for a look at the evolving business of the IRF.
Hello, everyone. Mark, thank you for the introduction, and I appreciate everyone's time today. My presentation focuses on the elements that are affecting the IRF's business as we approach the close of 2016. I'll begin by discussing current market conditions, followed by summarizing the top 3 concerns of IRFs, independent repair facilities, changing demographics, and defining the IRF's perception of telematics. And this is data that we just captured from a survey just a few months ago, and it's never been released, at least I don't believe so. And I purposely kept this data at the tail end of the presentation to keep everyone in their seats. Metrics. It's evident that an IRF's business is challenging. However, they have this uncanny way at the end of the day to always get the job done. I think they're miracle workers. 80%, think about this, 80% of all their jobs that they perform on a day-to-day basis, they have those vehicles repaired and back to their customers by 5 o'clock that day. And that is really, really something. And it tells you that this audience, their resolve comes from a number of resources for technical and management guidance that includes a grassroots of peers, a network of peers, trade publications for information that we produce on their behalf. They use the internet. They have program groups. They have retailers. They have manufacturers, distributors, and OEs, all there to assist them in their success, to ensure their success. It also helps that they have favorable market conditions that all of us in this industry are enjoying today. Gas prices are $2.25 a gallon on average. Car owners are piling on the miles with more than 3.1 trillion miles driven annually among those 272 million vehicles in operation. Favoring the IRF, and keep this in mind, is that 70% of these vehicles on the road, or 190 million vehicles, are 6 years or older, with the average age of vehicles in operation at 11.6 years. That's the oldest the average has ever been in the history of the automotive aftermarket. And that's a good thing. That's a great metric for the marketplace. I also want to add, in conversation that I have with a number of shop owners virtually every week, a lot of them are telling me that business is a bit mixed, that some shops are performing extremely well. Business is good. And others are reporting sales to be a little soft. And you know, business ebbs and flows at that grassroots repair level. But I think among those shops that what I'm hearing, there's the shops that are reporting that business is a little soft. They're telling me though that I can sense that they don't have that doom and gloom attitude. they're very confident that business will bounce back, and I think it will. They're resilient. They've been in business for a long time. They can figure things out. So let's look at the top 3 concerns among IRFs. This hasn't changed a lot over the years. Number 1, difficulty of repair due to vehicle design, a very, very big concern among IRFs, technicians, shop owners. Finding qualified techs, always been a problem. And then recognizing the competitive landscape. Who's my competition? Who's coming after me? So we'll take a quick look at that. Difficulty of repair, emerging technology. On the overall, IRFs are doing a great job of keeping up with the emerging technology. How do I know that? In 2013, I conducted a survey, this is about 3 years ago, that indicated about 50% of shop owners were performing difficult jobs that required appropriate tools and training, and that includes things like CAN bus diagnostics, electronic stability control, and gasoline direct injection type jobs. In a similar survey that I conducted just 14 months ago, the respondents indicated that 77% were performing these type of jobs, these type of complex jobs. So that's a 50% increase. And we're excited to launch a new survey during Q1 of 2017 to identify if they are keeping up with emerging technology. I believe that they are. So shops are embracing technology, and there's also some shops that have not embraced technology, but I tell them that there's time to jump in. The thing about the aftermarket is that the car park evolves slowly. IRFs are typically repairing vehicles older than 8 years, and the OE technology emerging today won't really service for another 6 to 8 years in their world. They have time to catch up, but they better act quickly by investing in the necessary diagnostic tools and equipment, and of course training. So for instance, all-wheel drive systems, they're more common, they're in the mainstream now, and turbocharged engines. This is technology that surfaced 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago into the mainstream. So shop owners and techs, they're going to have to recognize that they need to be equipped to repair these type of systems because they will eventually surface more frequently at their location. And that's going to happen today, not tomorrow. Finding qualified techs continues to be a problem for the shop owner, especially the younger tech, those in their 20s. I've conducted numerous surveys, and it's kind of disturbing to me. I discovered the youngest average age of the tech employed at the IRF is between 30 and 32. That's the youngest tech at these 100,000 locations across the country. So that tells me, where's that 20-something? That 20-something tech that's graduating from the tech vocational school, it appears that he's taking his first-time employment at a dealership. And he may eventually then consider employment opportunities at an IRF due to an interest in succession, potential ownership, having maybe a friend employed at an IRF. Maybe there's less hours on the weekend, especially the weekend, no Saturdays. So there's reasons for them to look at the IRF as a potential employer. However, we just need to do a better job at recruiting these 20-somethings as they graduate from these tech vocational schools. So I suggest to shop owners that they need to make a greater effort, and it appears to me in conversation that the ones that are having success are the ones that are establishing a relationship with local tech vocational schools and colleges. Of course, the commitment to hiring the youngest and perhaps the brightest requires a pleasant work environment, benefits, and competitive wages. Mentor a millennial. Car dealers are competitors. This surprised me, and it keeps surfacing that the IRFs, when I'm conducting surveys, only a small percent consider dealerships a serious threat. That mindset needs to change. It's evident from research conducted by the Auto Care Association, AASA, and us that dealers are chipping away at growing their repair share among vehicles that are 6 to 8 years old. And how are they doing that? Well, these dealerships, they're changing consumer behavior over time. Dealers are beginning to lower their labor rates to compete with IRFs. They're providing customer service, which includes those 5-star waiting rooms with free Wi-Fi, play areas, workstations, And more importantly, they're on the front end of technology. They invest in the tools and training required to repair the most complex jobs. The good news, though, is that IRFs have a repair share of well over 85% among all vehicles 8 years and older. And there's a ton of vehicles on the road that are 8 years and older. And that's a remarkable share that they need to protect. In addition to that, really, at the end of the day, these new car dealers, they just don't have the bay capacity to repair all these vehicles on the road today. They have their hands full with new car warranty work, and quite frankly, they pay more attention to new and used car sales than mechanical repair. However, though, you can't count them out. They're chipping away at these vehicles that are 6 to 8 years old, and the IRF has to recognize that. So the shop owner has to keep up with the pace of technology. He has to train his technicians, and they never ever want to suggest, and our research indicates that some IRFs, when they become frustrated, they'll suggest they take the vehicle back to the dealership. You can't do that. That's how they chip away at this 6 to 8 year old market share. Never suggest that. To do that, they have to stay on the front edge of technology. Demos, millennials, and telematics. By default, market conditions change as the millennials capture a growing share of the motoring population, and their expectations are different than Gen X and baby boomers. So should shop owners treat them differently? Maybe they should. So I'm talking to a bunch of millennials, aren't I, as we speak? Maybe they should. AAA just released a survey that indicates baby boomers are twice as likely than the younger generation to fully trust IRFs. Now, if I'm an IRF, I'm alarmed by that data, and I need to create a business plan that focuses exclusively on serving these millennials. So the question is, are millennials worth the effort? They probably don't have interest in driving anyway. Well, that's not true. The Auto Care Association recently reported that 68% of adults aged 18 to 34 own a vehicle, almost 7 out of 10. That's really positive data. I sense that it's probably not higher due to the price of new and used cars, and of course those college loans, right? So what's the plan look like to market to millennials if you're an IRF? Well, it's not rocket science. An IRF should consider different methods of communication, though. Text messaging and email supported with images to effectively communicate a repair quote will be much better received by millennials than by phone. Plus, for the IRF, what's it do? It builds trust, and that's exactly what the millennial wants. He wants to build trust with his provider of vehicle automotive service. They should also actively promote their services through local advertising and use social media to their advantage. And the good news is this. We found that 55% of shops now report having a Facebook page, and that's much higher than it was a year ago or so. And it tells me that the owners are much more comfortable with technology, and they recognize the position and value of this medium. In addition, it's probably a good idea for shops to consider connecting and investing with listing services that includes AAA, Ask Patty, Repair Pal, AutoMD, and others. So finally, telematics. Can IRFs influence millennials with telematics? I think so. They can also influence the Gen X and baby boomers as well. AAA reports in a recent survey, U.S. drivers want the ability to direct their vehicle data to the repair shop of their choice, the trusted facility with which they built a relationship. Really interesting. Just over a year ago, I suggested to a room full of shop owners that they should be cognizant of telematics and the potential impact it may have on their business, positive or negative. I really don't know. And they don't either. And I told them there's no reason to panic, but there's time to adapt and identify the opportunity this telematic technology has to offer. So let's start paying attention to it as an industry. And a year later, today, it appears telematics is gaining momentum. And even better, based on my survey, shop owners are paying attention to telematics. Here's the results of the completed survey just a few months ago. 36% of the 266 shop owners indicated they know a lot or a fair amount about telematics. That's a lot higher than I anticipated. This suggests a sizable percent of shop owners are interested in early adoption of telematics, and that's a good thing. That tells me they're paying attention. The flip side is that 61% admit not knowing a lot. But the silver lining is 90%, virtually all of them are interested in learning more about telematics on an ongoing basis. It's clear that shop owners have a vested interest moving forward, and they'll be paying attention to the potential impact this technology can have on their business. And almost half, 47%, think based on what they know, telematics will be a good thing for their business. It will have a positive impact. Other data points suggest 40%, almost half, would give customers a free device with a service agreement. They sort of understand that telematics has a value, but they may need to invest in it. I think that's really interesting. And 33% are currently using telematics. That surprised me. I just didn't think it would be higher than 20%. But 1/3 of the completed responses, the 33% of the 266 shop owners, indicated they're currently using telematics sometimes. And based on conversations I'm having, it appears that they're using it for their customer's children's car to primarily manage the maintenance while they're away at college. I hear that frequently. So they're getting their feet wet, I guess, in the telematics category. But I think, in my opinion, the most promising metric from this survey is that 55% would like to implement a plan during the next 12 months. Again, this is a very compelling data point that indicates the owner's interest in learning more and their desire to implement telematics as a component of their business plan. So that was a lot. I hope that this data was helpful, and that concludes our presentation that we hope provided insights beginning with Amy's year in review and Mark's summary of mergers and acquisition and my overview of the challenges facing the IRF. I guess what we'll do now is take any questions.
Sure, thanks. So we've had a few questions come in while you've been speaking, so we'll just get started. If you have any questions, just go ahead and type them in and we'll get to them as we can. So the first question, the dealerships with repair shops, which has the higher share of the market, domestic or import cars, and then do you see a difference in one over the other?
You know, Katie, I'm not sure I understand the question. Most dealerships, on average, have 18 bays. And there is about 18,000 dealers across the country, and I would tell you that at least half of them make up, perhaps more, make up the import-domestic nameplate. And so what was the tail end of that second part of that question?
Do you see a difference in one over the other? I'm guessing between domestic and import cars?
You know, I don't. That's okay. You know, I'll tell you where we see a difference. It might be with that more sophisticated vehicle, the higher end vehicle, both domestic and import. The good, for the Mercedes or the European nameplate, there's a tendency of that consumer taking and relying on the dealership for repairs further out, even after the warranty period. There may be a trust issue among that group. So I think in most cases, the high-end European or Japanese vehicle takes longer for the IRF to get their hands on.
Okay. Is there a future for IRFs that choose not to invest in technology and training moving forward?
Good question. You know, I think so. Especially on the older vehicles, the vehicles in operation is only going to grow. The average age of a vehicle life at 11.6 is only going to continue to grow. So those shops that are not investing in technology and training, or only to a certain point, they'll have a place, they'll have a niche, but most likely it will be for those older vehicles that are probably 12, 15 years old and require only some general maintenance. So that's where I see those shops will have a place, only because of the number of vehicles in operation and the average age of the vehicle just growing. So they'll have a place by default. But of course they won't have the success that an IRF will have of those that invest in technology, equipment, and in training, of course.
Okay. In the survey results of telematics, and this is a quote, what does knowing a lot or a fair amount about telematics mean?
You know, it tells me, that's a good question. We just launched a newsletter, and as a publisher, we're going to pay a lot more attention to telematics. It just tells me that this is a shop that is a progressive type shop, and he's ahead of the curve, and that they do exist, and that they're looking to grow their business, and they recognize telematics. I'm not certain where they're finding their information, perhaps from folks that are selling the devices and other service providers in the category. But I do know that we'll be paying a lot more attention to telematics as a category in 2017, and of course with the launch of our newsletter just a month ago, Telematics Talk.
Are longer replacement rates a possible reason for the difficult business conditions facing some IRFs? Yeah,
there's a trend that's happening there. It's really something. I have to tell you, I replaced my wiper blades, actually the wiper blades on my son's vehicle when he was home from school. And I can remember, it wasn't that long ago, I could replace a set of wiper blades for $20, maybe 10. And today, I didn't have many choices. I had a lot of choices, but they all started at about $40, which just was incredible to me. And I paid it. Tires, another good example. You could replace your tires, it felt like just not that long ago, for $300–400, and today about $100 a tire. Today it's about $200 to $500 a tire. It's just incredible. Another example are fuel pumps. A few years ago, fuel pumps were only $75. Today they're well over $200. So the interval is longer. However, the sophistication of that part itself is driving the price up. So if I'm an IRF, I think you got to take advantage of the rising cost of parts by improving and growing your margin on that part. And I think you also have to adjust the labor rates when necessary. I don't have a solution, but I think shops would be smart based on maybe perhaps creating a sliding scale depending on the sophistication of repair. So if it's a complex job, it requires some tools that are not the norm, you know, perhaps they need to charge a higher labor rate to offset this trend of longer replacement rates.
If a company decides to stray away from telematics in 2017, do you think that will hurt their business?
No, I don't think it will, because I don't have a crystal ball, but I think telematics will. I just don't know. That's such a really good question. It could, but maybe it's not. My personal feeling is that it may take a bit of time for it to gain some traction, but I just don't think it's going to affect an IRS business terribly, you know, tomorrow, next year, next month, or next year. I just think there's a lot, at this point with telematics, we're really in a position to learn more about it, to learn what the impact is, whether it's positive or negative, and who will pay for that, right? There's some cost involved. There's who will pay for the device itself. Is it the shop? Is it the distribution partner? Is it the consumer? The feeling at the moment is the consumer loves the idea of telematics, but they don't want to pay for that device, and they don't want to pay that monthly fee. So perhaps the IRF partners with their distribution partner to offset that cost of telematics to keep that customer for that shop owner. There's a lot of ways to look at this, but I just don't think it will negatively impact anyone's business tomorrow.
So that's all the questions. Are there any final thoughts from our presenters?
No, we just appreciate everyone's time. We hope that they found it informative, and hope to do it again.
Great. If you can flip to the last slide, we can wrap up a little bit early and let everyone get back to work. I just want to put a plug in. So this is our last webinar for 2016. Our next webinar will be Thursday, January 19th, a networking master class with Dana Manciagli, she was also our speaker at AAPEX, so she has a follow-up webinar. We have our session recorded from AAPEX that we're going to post online in the coming weeks, so we hope you can join us in the new year. Thank you everyone for your time today. Thank you so much to our presenters. Wishing everyone a happy holiday season, and we'll talk to you in the new year. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.